Yes, of course I know all about autism. I've been watching this channel and other channels too. I know about the social awkwardness, the sensory sensitivities, the communication difficulties, the stimming, all of it. All of it, you say? Do you know about the lesser known autistic traits? Lesser known? What do you mean? Well, like Alexithymia, for example. Alexa what? Sounds like you need to watch this week's video. I guess so. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Autism-Philes. My name is Shay, and I make weekly videos on autism. This week, we're going to count down the top 10 lesser-known autism traits. If you've been watching this channel and other autistic YouTubers like Yosemite Sam, Purple Ella, and Hunter Hansen, you probably know all the big ones, the ones that get talked about the most, like the social awkwardness and sensory sensitivities, for example. But there are a whole bunch of others that, for whatever reason, don't get as much press. So in this video, we'll take a look at 10 of those traits that just aren't as well known. Now, these won't be in any particular order, so don't read too much into the placement of each trait on this list. It's not like number 10 is most known of the lesser known and number 1 is the least known of the lesser known. Does that make any sense? Number 10, sleep disorders. Sleep problems are twice as likely in autistic children as they are in neurotypical children. One 2019 study found that 80% of autistic preschoolers had disrupted sleep. People with autism suffer from insomnia at a higher rate than the general population. One study found that it takes autistic people 11 minutes longer on average to fall asleep than neurotypical people. And we spend less time in REM sleep, that is rapid eye movement sleep, that's where we dream, than neurotypical folks. I've had problems with insomnia off and on throughout my life. Even as a kid, I would often have trouble falling asleep. My mind is just so active that I'll lay there at night for a good while before I can finally fall asleep. Some of us on the autism spectrum also have trouble staying asleep, though that's rarely been the case for me. For me, it's been the falling asleep and then the waking up in the morning part I have trouble with. Number 9, bedwetting. Somewhat related to number 10, bedwetting is more common in children with autism and ADHD than it is in the general population. And of those, it is more common in boys than girls. I wet the bed until about age 12, then just suddenly grew out of it. If you have an autistic child who wets the bed, please don't be mad at them. It's not their fault. Some have a particularly small bladder that just can't hold that much urine. That was me. Whenever we would go on road trips, I was always the first kid out of my brothers to have to use the bathroom. Some of us sleep very heavily and don't even feel the wetness until we wake up. Again, that was me. Number 8, gastrointestinal problems. I first learned about this one from a Purple Ella video. In the video, Purple Ella cites a Columbia University study that found that irritable bowel disorders, such as ulcerative colitis and Crohn's disease, are 67% more likely in autistic children than in neurotypical ones. 67%. Full disclosure, I have ulcerative colitis. I was diagnosed as a young adult rather than a child, but I find it amazing that this is yet another thing I have or had that is related to autism. If ever I had any doubt. Number 7, pain tolerance. People on the autism spectrum can be both hypo and hyper sensitive to pain. When I was a kid, my mom was always telling doctors that I had a high tolerance for pain. In other words, if little Shay was complaining about pain, he was definitely in pain. Now, part of that could have been a reluctance to complain on my part, but it also could have been that the pain didn't bother me as much. In some cases, I think that pain bothers me more, or maybe it does now that I'm an adult. As an example, whenever I get the flu or any kind of a viral infection, I always experience terrible body aches. I feel like I've run a marathon. I don't run marathons. In fact, I don't run at all. Only when chased. Anyway, the pain is so bad and Tylenol barely touches it that the only thing that helps is taking hot showers or baths. So when I'm sick, I take a lot of them. I know a lot of other people get that same symptom, and it's common with COVID, which I had back in early June, but I get the impression from talking to others that it doesn't hurt them quite as much as it does me. And at the same time, I'm not bothered by getting blood work or IVs put in, though that's probably because I'm so used to that. And at the same time as that, I look at someone like Dan from the Aspie world who has piercings and tattoos, and I think, how? I would think that would just really hurt, somebody on the autism spectrum, especially more than most people. But for myself, to quote Daffy Duck, I'm not like other people. Pain hurts me. Number 6, clumsiness. People on the autism spectrum often have trouble with motor skills, hence the clumsiness. Some of us are a danger to ourselves just walking. I remember tripping over my own feet quite a bit as a kid, and I had and still have tiny feet. It took me forever to learn to roller skate, for example. I struggled with learning to catch a baseball, and I absolutely couldn't learn how to, excuse me, and I absolutely couldn't learn how to drive a stick. My dad tried to teach me, but I nearly drove us off a cliff. Okay, well, not a cliff, but a steep embankment, okay? After that, he decided driving an automatic would be just fine for me. I still can't drive a stick to this day. Although it doesn't get as much press as other autism traits, difficulties with motor skills are quite common in autistic children and adults. It is a period of civil war. Rebel spaceships striking from a hidden base have won their first victory against... Oh, we're rolling? Sorry. Number 5, connection to the Force. No, I mean, not the Force. I mean, connection to nature and animals. One of the most well-known traits of autism is that we have trouble relating to other people. Many of us struggle to form and keep friendships. And then there's autism and dating, which probably should be a whole nother video. Suffice it to say, relationships with other humans are never easy for us. It shouldn't be too much of a surprise then to learn that many people on the autism spectrum, especially autistic girls it would seem, get along, or get on, as my British friends would say, very well with animals. Many autistic people do very well with pets. After all, pets offer unconditional love. As long as we take care of them, they take care of us. Animals don't place the same kind of demands on us that other people do. A dog or a cat, for example, doesn't know or care that you're autistic. A pet is okay with you being you and will love you even if you're weird. I mean, to them, you're probably not that weird anyway. Some of us even choose animals as a special interest. One job that autistic people can do especially well is taking care of animals. Beyond just animals, of course, many of us enjoy time out in nature. As a kid, I spent time fishing, camping, swimming, ice skating in the winter, and just generally playing outside. And like my character, Lucas, I've always enjoyed climbing trees. If you haven't yet seen my video on astrology, tarot, and autism, in which I actually climb a tree at the end of that video, I'll provide a link to that at the end of this one. I don't understand what you mean by a leaf on the wind. What is that? It's coming up? Okay, I'll pay attention. And there's some, I'm a leaf on the wind. What? No, not wash. I'm sorry. Where were we? You should have warned me about that, okay? Anyway, number 4, gender nonconformity. Many people on the autism spectrum do not conform to the stereotypes of their gender. In fact, recent research suggests that gender diversity is more common in those with autism than those who are neurotypical. One study suggested that up to 25% of the LGBTQ community may also be autistic. Some of us eventually go on to transition to the other gender, and some, while not transitioning, will live life dressing and behaving as the other gender. Now, I'm not going to do a deep dive on this simply because I don't know a whole lot about it. Gender identity and autism has also been covered by other autistic YouTubers. I think Yosemite Sam has a video on this, if I remember right. I'll try to find it and link it in the description. Anyway, instead, what I want to focus on with this video are my experiences in this area. I'm not trans myself, and I identify as my biological sex. I have, however, often been called gay, sissy, a pansy, and generally made fun of for not being manly enough. Some say I have a gay voice, or just generally act effeminate. Believe it or not, I'm actually straight. My best friends early in life were all girls. It wasn't until I was about 8 years old that I actually made friends with another boy. Before that, I would just hang out with girls. As an adult, I've had many female friends, but rarely any girlfriends. Some of these friendships have been quite close, at least from my perspective. Another thing I'll tell you, and then I'll move on to the next one, is that sometimes I get stuck in my head and then get accused of staring at someone. It's not that I'm staring at a particular person, but that I'm staring. Well, one time this happened in high school. I was off in my own head, in my own world, and appeared to be staring at this other kid. Anyway, I got caught, so to speak, and accused of not only staring at this boy, but also of being interested in him sexually. I was not. Thankfully, being called gay is not the insult that it once was. Not that it ever should have been, of course, but, the past is what it is. When I was a kid, very few people were out because being gay was just not accepted the way that it is today. 3, Autistic Voice. In his book, The Complete Guide to Asperger's Syndrome, Dr. Anthony Atwood talks at length about autistic speech patterns. But this is one of those traits that doesn't get talked about as much. Autistic people are known to have unusual voices or unusual ways of speaking. For example, a lot of us are described by neurotypical folks as talking like a robot or like a machine. In the last video, we talked about something known as flat affect, which is a lack of expression on one's face. Well, some people on the autism spectrum can also have an expressionless voice. For those of you who are Star Trek fans, think of the way that Commander Data talks on The Next Generation. A lot of autistic people speak like that too, or in a similar way. In addition to maybe speaking like a machine, some of us may talk like we're from somewhere else than where we're really from. We may develop strange accents no one can quite place, or will mimic other accents, often without even realizing it. As an example, when I was in junior high school, yes, I went to a junior high rather than a middle school, I had this bully named Angel. He was no angel though. He loved to make fun of me for how I talked. To him, I sounded British. One day, the teacher let me move closer to the blackboard so I could see better. I needed glasses and for whatever reason I didn't have them. So he, the teacher, asked me, how that was, and I replied that it was better. After that, Angel kept mocking me, asking me, "Is it better?" I have this alternate headcanon where I come back at him with, "No, it's not better. What are you going thinking it's better for, you wanker?" Unfortunately, that didn't really happen. I just sat there and took it. Angel was bigger than me. Now, I did grow up watching early 80s Nickelodeon, so I saw a lot of British, Australian, and Canadian shows like The Tomorrow People, Doctor Who, Under the Mountain, Red Dwarf, and You Can't Do That on Television. A show called Turkey Television would often air some of the clean skits, or rather cleaner skits, of Monty Python. It's amazing what they got away with there in the early 80s. Anyway, if to others I sounded like I had a foreign accent, well, that's not too surprising, and this is actually common in autism. Finally, many autistic people have trouble with modulating their rate of speech or their volume of speech. Some of us may talk too fast or talk too slow. Others may speak too loudly or too quietly. For myself, I was often being told by adults to speak up. "Speak up, boy. I can't hear you," they would tell me. It seemed my voice was just nearly always too quiet. Another thing I should add here really quick is that there was this one neighbor boy when I was like 11 who said I had a really cool voice. I've also been told by others that I have a good voice for radio, and I've also been told that I have a good voice for, that I have a calming, soothing voice that would be good for, like, doing guided meditations, things like that. Quick, tell me the name of this actress. That's right, it's Jennifer Lawrence. Now, if you saw a picture of Jennifer Lawrence and also a picture of a Jennifer Lawrence lookalike, would you be able to tell the difference between the two? That's actually the subject of an online test for if you can recognize faces. Because here we are now at number 2, Prosopagnosia. Hope I pronounced that right. Otherwise known as face blindness. Now, when I took this test, I did not do terribly, but I did not do well either. Even on actors and actresses that I know well, that I'm fans of, I sometimes was, tripped up by the lookalikes. I thought, oh, well, that must be the real person, And nope, not right. That was the lookalike. So a lot of autistic people have trouble recognizing faces to various degrees. Some of us with a more severe case of this disorder may just not recognize faces at all, even of people that you know well. Other folks, like myself, only have a problem when seeing people outside of the context of which I know them. For example, there have been many times I've run into coworkers in the community and not initially recognize them. Only when they see that look of confusion on my face and say, "Oh, it's so-and-so from work," am I like, "Duh, of course. Yeah, I knew that. Of course it's so-and-so." But before that, I'm struggling to figure out who is this person and where do I know them from. Also, sometimes if I haven't seen you in a number of years, I might not recognize you. In fact, this has happened so much, I am now great at second guessing myself when it comes to recognizing people. So I might see you and recognize you and even be able to recall your name, but then I'll wonder, is this really the person I think it is? Or am I mistaken? So like, I'll know who you are, but I'll second guess myself and I'll convince myself that no, that can't really be you. Anyway, for me, I also have a version of this with voices too, especially on the phone. I don't know if there's an official word for that. There probably is, but at work especially, if someone doesn't say who they are, I will often not recognize their voice. Because at my work, when you pick up the phone, it'll tell you, where the call is coming from, but not necessarily, the person that's on the other end of the line. So if they don't say who they are, then I will often just not recognize the voice at all. Now, as soon as they say who they are, of course, then it will click. Then it'll be like, oh, duh, of course. Like, how could I not recognize their voice? But for some reason, I don't. So, yeah, that's another thing with autistic people is not recognizing faces and or voices. We are now to number 1, Alexithymia, emotion blindness. I've only known about this one for maybe a year. Before that, I'd never heard this word before. Alexithymia is a Greek word and it translates to emotion blindness. This affects a lot of autistic people, and yet for some reason, it's not as well known among the general public. So let's talk about it. A lot of us on the autism spectrum have difficulty with figuring out and or describing our feelings. After taking an online alexithymia test, I discovered I probably have a mild form of this. Some on the autism spectrum may have a more severe form. For myself, I often have to process my feelings first before I can figure out exactly what they are. Or I know what I'm feeling, but not why. I sometimes approach feelings intellectually, trying to analyze them more than feel them. One autistic friend of mine described emotion as sometimes being like this formless, nameless blob of feeling that just comes on and is completely overwhelming. So for different autistic people, this may manifest differently. In fact, you don't even need to have alexithymia at all to be autistic. Some of us don't have this. Okay, so that's my list of the top 10 lesser well-known autism traits. Did I miss any? If I did, please let me know in the comments. Can you identify with any of these? Even if you have an autism diagnosis, you may not have every single one. For myself, I do, or did in the case of bedwetting, have everyone on this list to various degrees. But if you don't, that's okay. It doesn't make your diagnosis invalid. And if you don't have a diagnosis yet, it's okay. You may still be autistic even without all of these traits on this list. Well, that's all the time we have today for Autism-Philes. Please like, subscribe, share this video, and leave me some comments. What do you think of this list? Do you agree or disagree? Anything you'd add to it? Thanks so much for watching, everyone. I'm an Autism-Phile, and I hope you are too. Bye for now. Hello, everyone. I have mentioned this book right here in my very first video, and I just mentioned it again in this video. It's Tony Attwood's Complete Guide to Asperger's Syndrome, which of course is now called Autism Spectrum Disorder, which he talks about in the new foreword to this book. But this is a great book. It was reading this one that really prompted me to go see that clinical psychologist, because after I read this, I was more convinced than I ever had been that I'm on the spectrum. So this book I got on Amazon, and so can you. This is the paperback version, but it also comes in hardback, in Kindle, and there's even an audiobook version. So whatever kind of books you like to read, it is there. I will provide a link in the description if you want to buy a copy of this book for yourself. And remember, if you do buy a copy, you will be helping this channel, because I am now a member of the Amazon affiliate marketing program. So all of the different autism themed products that I will tell you about, uh, you can get on Amazon, and if you do, you'll be helping this channel out. So here it is, The Complete Guide to Asperger's Syndrome by Tony Attwood. Pick it up at Amazon.